Let me ask another way. Where do you think, if I'm the CEO of a marketplace company or high up in a marketplace company, where do you lose me? Where do you lose me in this email? The intention behind this was good, which is I am a CTO. I am an accomplished CTO, and I'm not here to waste your time. But I want to add that nuance again, because you, as people who think, oh yeah, that's bad, I would never do that, that again was coming from a good place of like trying to be not a salesperson.
What's up, guys? What you're about to watch is an hour-long lecture I gave in downtown Austin, Texas about the theory of a great cold sales email. This is going to be a deep dive, but this session was awesome because we had several founders that were interactive throughout this session, and you'll actually hear we worked through numerous different examples. The genesis for this, by the way, is we are working with several different pre-seed to about Series D founders right now, and we are working on very custom messaging that has gotten exceptional results. I actually walk through and show an example of a founder we work with that is creating an AI agent company where they sent over 1,000 automated emails and got 0 meetings out of it. We sat down with them, went through this exercise that I'm about to show you. They sent 14 emails to CEOs of publicly traded and funded companies, and we got 3 meetings, not responses, 3 meetings. That is an absolutely insane conversion rate. And again, guys, this is not a quick video. This is a deep dive lecture. So if you have the time, I hope you get a lot out of it. And also let me know if you have any questions in the comments below. I still monitor them myself. So if you're trying to workshop an email or you're trying to get some guidance, feel free to reach out. Thanks, guys.
What inspired this session, like I said, more or less saying this for the video here, is we worked with a founder recently. They started an AI company. I won't say specifically what it is, but they're trying to get to the point where they have enough customers to then go fundraise, but they have none right now, and they're really struggling to raise. They sent over 1,000 messages using Clay and AI. Are those some of the tools you're using, like Clay, and anything else?
Yeah, Clay, we're using something neat that I send actual emails, but also just like thought sequences and
all that stuff.
Some recruiter-specific tools too.
Nice. And like, I don't discourage that at all, but I think that's everyone's inclination right now. Like, Clay is a really powerful tool, but like, I hope this illustrates and what we'll dive into. And I'm actually going to show you the actual messages too. So this isn't going to be like theory. But like a lot of people are like, okay, I got 1 response. Now let me blow this up. Or just, hey, let me send 10,000 and see what happens. And really the hope here is to actually narrow it down to like the very specifics, like framework and theory. There's no one silver bullet, but this will hopefully give you kind of a launch pad. And also I encourage you to be interactive. So like if you want to work out a real example for your own company while we're doing this, like feel free. Just stating the results again, we spent a morning going after 14 CEOs. We got 3 meetings with a highly custom message. Again, I'll show you guys what that is. One of which raised $7 million. Literally was like, this sounds great, sent the Calendly link. Like literally a week prior in TechCrunch, they just announced a $7 million raise. And then they set 15 meetings over the course of 1 week. Quick overview of the agenda. I think oftentimes we forget about thinking of like, what is the purpose of a cold email? That may change, but depending on who you're sending it to, if they're inbound or outbound, why are we sending it? What is the actual outcome? Same with who we should email. I think generally you know who your customers are, but oftentimes we kind of think like, okay, I sell to engineers, and that's it. And you don't get really, really specific on company size, why this engineer would make more sense than others. And when you actually take the time to do that, you can craft even more compelling messaging. But also on the back end, if you find that that works well, you will find that persona across the US or wherever your market is. And now you can actually scale that out with more specificity. Going to have some baseline structures, examples of bad and okay emails. The whole point I want to make with this presentation is like, we're in an era right now where email has exploded. When I first joined sales, it was like right when these automation tools like Outreach, SalesLoft, Cadence, sequencing tools started. Now everyone's numb to it. You get them, you know what it's like, you see it, and already your defenses go up. And so really the goal is not to give you like intro level, here's an email. This is like, our goal here is like 1% level emails. Everything else is a waste of time in my opinion. So we'll look at the baseline structure of a sequence if we have time, and then when and when not to use AI. But I just want to mention like the average founder salesperson, oftentimes you're trying a lot of stuff without testing. That's a significant problem. Also, a lot of you probably are going on LinkedIn and looking at LinkedIn influencers, nothing against them. But if they're selling sales tools to salespeople, or their name is Grant Cardone, and you are selling like DevOps infrastructure for like some of the most sophisticated cloud companies in the world, I would not necessarily take their advice all that seriously. And that's like a big thing I see. Again, a lot of people are like, okay, this didn't work for 3 days, so now I'm going to try this. And Eric said to do this, so I'm going to try that. Oh, that didn't work, and now by Monday next week, you're trying something else. Just a lot of symptoms that I see. And I just want to reiterate, kind of starting to think about first and foremost, before we even just dive into what is a good email in the first place, a lot of people don't really think about the person they're sending it to and receiving it. Like, of course, you know, a lot of people are getting emails. You probably understand, like, you're desensitized, you're a little like, But again, it's like we say that, and then we don't actually think about their physical reaction. Like when I wake up and in the morning I have 5 people trying to sell me video editing services for my YouTube channel, the second I see that, like I'm already defenses up. And it doesn't mean I'm not gonna respond to it, but given that we know that's the case, how do we immediately stand out? And honestly, I think especially like the higher and higher up we go in terms of personas, if I'm a VP, if I'm a CEO, I'm probably not even taking any cold emails at all. And if I am, I'm not even reading them to see what they're about. I'm reading them to disqualify them. And I would challenge you when you guys get cold emails, if there is one line in the first 1 or 2 sentences that you know is generic, you're like, nope, and it's gone. And so with that, how do we then, again, start to reverse engineer how to structure a good message? What I would say, again, is like 9%, or at least maybe trying to ask a question or start a conversation. Maybe I have time, maybe I don't. We're trying to, by the end of this presentation today, get to like the 1% of emails where they're going to respond. But also keep in mind, just because it's a killer email, they might be busy, got in an argument with their spouse, kid got in detention or something, and yeah, there's a lot at play. Pause me at any time. I'll take a break here in just a second, but this is kind of laying the foundation for what we're really about to dive into. Again, I just want to reiterate, a lot of people, I think they are consciously thinking about who their ICP is. Like, let me take you for an example. Like, who's your ICP? Or ideal customer profile for those of you there.
For the staffing agency, I know it's not exactly tech, but I feel like it's applicable. HR managers of large companies, there's a rough size we do as like target, but who are currently hiring for contract labor roles.
For contract, okay.
Yeah.
Do you get more specific than that in terms of like industry or?
Yeah, we do
okay.
actually maritime contracting, industrial, and occasionally oil and gas.
Okay. And even with industrial, do you guys break it down further?
Not really. In that industry, there's like a lot of small players and some really big players, like big names that people know, but not really much further than that.
Okay, for sure. And again, these are all ideas more than like shame on you. That's not the point of this. But it's like I think when you're really building out holistic messaging, if you define this down to an extreme level, you can get a much better gauge of how your messaging is resonating. And again, let's keep pulling the thread of this example. You've narrowed it down to people hiring for contract work in industry or industrial lines, but now maybe you go strictly to auto construction. And then I'm kind of making this up, maybe help me if there's anything here, but like even within automobile industries, if there's like different components or like I know like someone supplying automakers, like a Continental who makes like tires and spark plugs or something. Is that a level of specificity that exists within your industry?
Yeah, I would say, so maritime is actually our biggest one.
Okay.
I would say there is, like if you go to like oil and gas maritime, there's like upstream, downstream, midstream, there's providers, I think there's some specificity there. Yeah.
Okay, for sure. And the only reason I do that or say that is not because that's the thing you're missing, but I think if a lot of people, when you slow down and really narrow it that specifically, it then allows you to now change. Because for instance, I'm just spitballing here, so feel free to like call my BS, but if you're just kind of looking at industrial as an entire category, it's much harder to take industrial and then hypothetically go to like tech, Like those are huge blankets. But the flip side is when we get really, and going back to the example that I'm going to break down today, we worked with this AI founder. Their previous business was a marketplace, like where you could list books and sell them. And then we narrowed down his customer base to actually other marketplace founders specifically. And he built authority by reaching out as having been a past founder of a marketplace company. So it's going to differ based on where you're at. But as an example, if you can come in and say, hey, we work with Continental or something, and now you're approaching Ford. Like those are very logical transitions, and you can actually segment and kind of get repeatability and customization, even though generally speaking, you've just broken it down enough to create very distinguishable parts of your email to then make frameworks. I'll pause. Any questions on that? Because that was really hypothetical, but cool. Anyone here working with inbound leads, by the way? I wish. Okay, great answer. Yeah. Okay, cool. Awesome. So here's where, well, you are welcome to jump in at any time here. But I think generally speaking, the purpose of a cold email is, I would say, one, start a conversation. If this is pure outbound, maybe it's an executive, maybe it's someone you know who is probably not likely to just jump on a call. That could be one route. Or conversely, the obvious, which is take a meeting. And I think people often as well sometimes don't even think about starting a conversation, where oftentimes in my first role as an SDR, we had people downloading free trials all the time or downloading white papers. And instead of trying to go for the meeting right away, it was just a simple ask of like, what were you hoping to do with our trial? Or what were you hoping to understand from our white paper or something of that nature? Versus, yeah, there are appropriate times to go for a meeting. And again, I say this kind of for the founder in here that's never been in a sales role. A lot of people, like you go on LinkedIn, people post like this magic email got me 7 meetings. I mean, I'm even up here saying like we got 3 meetings with 14 sends, right? And we all glorify like the setting the meeting and all of these different things. But I think it's really important to like segment exactly what our goal is and then work backwards from there. So questions, we're actually going to get into the structure now and I have examples. But we're all good? Cool. Anything, by the way, that this has already shed light on, or if not, it's totally cool. I'm just curious, like, especially like this distinction here, for those of you that are sending emails, do you always have the same ask? What is that ask? Is that like, let's meet, let's talk? I'm just curious what you guys have done so far. Let's talk. Yeah? Anybody else? Jump on a call? Yeah.
That's a question.
Sure.
So I'm trying to think, because most of my sales interactions, they haven't been completely cold, they're like through like an introduction or something, so there's kind of already an awareness of the desired interaction. But like, if I was to send a cold email, so I'm like going to be reaching out to accelerators. I have one accelerator that I work with and have several clients, and there's like a profile of that accelerator, so I can be like, okay.
And this is for founders, not companies looking for retreats, right? Yeah. Okay.
So I'm thinking, right now my list for next week is to contact people within this large accelerator to actually do more programming for them, and that's through my clients. But let's say it's either that or a new one. When it says start a conversation, don't sell them. I'm like, so I tell them what I want to talk about though, right? Which aren't they already understanding that there's a product?
Yeah. No.
What's the difference, I guess, between sell them and start a conversation?
Yeah, I think a couple different ways. I don't think either is better or worse. I think it's all about the situation. It may be appropriate to have like a free consultation, especially in the coaching space. That's a very valid way to start a conversation because there's perceived value, especially if they want like one-on-one coaching. I would say the start a conversation for me tends to be with highly technical users. Oftentimes, like engineers do not want to talk to salespeople. So I can talk about ways that I've kind of like disguised myself as like a quasi support person and tried to like open up the conversation. And then I uncover, they're like, oh yeah, I want to do like all these super complex things. I'm like, hey, great. How about we hop on a call and discuss it? And they're like, oh, sweet. Like, yeah. And then they show up and that's how I start a conversation. I would also say with very busy executives, also in the B2B lens, oftentimes if I'm reaching out to them, I've crafted a really deep like point of view in terms of like, hey, based on your 10K report or your earnings or your statement about the AI initiative at Capital One or something, I don't know. That's more of like I'm coming to the table with a point of view, and I might say something like, worth more information, or like, am I off base here, or something of that nature to see if they even respond. And maybe I'm setting it up in a way that I want that CEO or global VP to say like, hey, this is interesting, tell me more. And then I keep a conversation going and get an at-bat. Because like if you're outreach to CEO of like a Fortune 1000 company, they're not going to be like, sure, here's my Calendly. Like that will never happen, ever. So I don't know if that's a right or wrong answer. I don't know if that helps, but.
Yeah, I'll just keep listening and I'll ask.
Okay. Because I was actually going to say, I think maybe this will start to kind of paint the picture here as well in terms of like the baseline structure. I think in your case, let me kind of role play a hypothetical example. So first and foremost, just stating for everyone, it's like general structure, an observation about them, why you're reaching out and value you can bring to them, and then call to action, whether that's a conversation, whether that's setting a meeting. And I know this looks simple. We're going to break it down further. But I almost always think less is more. I get people who, if you're going to do anything that would equate to text this long, make a custom Loom video or like record yourself on your computer. My video editor right now for YouTube actually sent me an 8-minute video breaking down why they would be valuable. I would never read that in text, but because he sent a video, I was like, okay. meet the prospect where we're at. That kind of ties into that last example. CEO of like a Fortune 1000 or 500 person company is not going to be like, yeah, I'd love to meet. And then also I think right-sizing the call to action. So I'll go to this, and then I think this would be a good point for us to kind of break down your example further. But a very, very simple example here. Someone at my first company, maybe they start a free trial, or they downloaded a white paper, or they signed up for a webinar. I'm going to have, again, the observation about them. Really simple example. Hey, you started a trial of our product. I wanted to reach out as I'm the point of contact for our new users in Texas. And I do this kind of, again, quasi sitting as like a support person. Like, hey, I'm here to help. That's what that implies. And then anything particular you're hoping to build. This accomplishes two things, and this is specific to my company. I'm not saying it's great for you. But a lot of times people who start a free trial are just wasting time. They're kicking tires. They're not actually serious. So if they respond and they give me like a nonchalant, non-serious response, I'm going to be able to not waste 30 minutes on a call with them. So I don't want to offer the call right away unless they're actually serious. The flip side is, again, that engineer who doesn't want to talk to a salesperson might come back and say, hey, we want to do all these different things. I'm like, this is great information, and there's a ton here. Let's hop on a call and break it down further. So again, that's very specific to my company. In your case, so how many founders are here? Like how many are in this accelerator that you're going to be reaching out to?
So I'm not reaching out to the founders, I'm reaching to the program coordinators of the accelerator to get more visibility, like offering classes like this, but within their programming. So they have like multiple sites throughout the US and stuff. And so it's to the staff of the accelerator.
Gotcha, okay. And have you worked with a similar type of organization before?
Yeah.
Okay, so, because the reason I bring that up, and I'm gonna keep pulling this back, so I'm gonna show you guys some different emails, and this is kind of that observation. This is the value that I can potentially bring, and this is the call to action. So I would ask you, these are some common openers that I would use for inbound leads who are interacting with our website, downloading a white paper, starting a free trial. I know this isn't necessarily, like, I have some stuff on Outbound too, but this is what I would ask you, and we can spitball some ideas back and forth. How would you even, what is like a common or observation about these people that you can show, like you know their space, you're watching them grow, and or they make some type of announcement, or maybe they had one of their companies just like, blow up in a good way. I don't know, is there anything that you would maybe start an email with that kind of builds that rapport with that person that makes them think like, okay, you at least understand who I am and what I'm about?
Yeah. Yes, I'm trying to think of like which example, because I think
Sure.
I mentioned two examples and I'm like trying to sort them out because some of them are much warmer than other ones. But I think what I'm mainly hearing that I can take away is like find something to talk to them about, like on their LinkedIn or something, because through the accelerator that I'm already affiliated with and just want deeper connections to, I have my own client work with them to talk about, or I'm connected to a lot of them and see them all day long on my LinkedIn feed. So I think that part's almost maybe not even totally necessary because the relationship's already so open, but like I'm thinking like tangential organizations to them. What I'm hearing is find some of the specific growth that they're having, comment on it.
Yeah, that could be one avenue. And also, like I'm just spitballing here, but let's say you approach a coordinator of an accelerator that's smaller than one that you already work with. They might be growing so quickly, they're either trying to staff like event coordinators, or they're trying to bring on people to help their entrepreneurs or facilitate some type of interaction. So maybe you find a job opening. Maybe you find, I don't know, like different coordinators that work there, and you can ask them like, hey, saw you've already added 2 coordinators this year and was curious like what extracurricular events you're providing for your entrepreneurs in residence or something of that nature. So.
Yeah, okay.
Cool. And by the way, I'm recording. If you're typing too, I am recording. I can send you the recording after too. So, okay, sweet. But any thoughts on that? Like, is that helping? Is that narrowing it in?
Yeah, I guess the second question is like, how do I find that information?
LinkedIn's always a great spot. I've actually found ChatGPT Deep Research, so the $20 a month is really nice. So I actually use, I'll kind of go off script here a little bit. So pending how much is in the news, like the reason I love Deep Research is because it takes you all of 2 minutes to start it, and then just runs in the background. It may or may not have useful stuff, but especially if you're going after like a large organization, what I might do, let's just say like, hey, so Prompt Cowboy takes a lazy prompt and turns it into like a long, sophisticated, well-structured one. as an example, I might do like a deep research prompt, and I say like, hey, I am a founder coach that helps early stage entrepreneurs. Can't spell under the gun here, sorry. That helps early stage entrepreneurs, with like their inner game?
Yeah.
Okay, just a simple example, yeah, with their inner game, I'd like to prospect into Capital Factory in Austin, Texas, and need to know everything I can about the business and see where I can provide value. So what this is going to do, it's not actually going to kick off this research, but it's going to give you a really well-structured prompt, at which point I'm going to come over to ChatGPT. I'm going to filter this by this deep research. And then this thing, again, it goes like really deep here. So also shout out to Capital Factory. They had a prompt engineering section, and they taught me about this website. So, but it's really nice, structures it. And again, I'm just using a generic example. I'm going to kick this off in the background while I keep going, and we'll see what it comes up with. But this could be things like if you're going for, like, let's say companies in the earnings example, or sorry, companies in the retreat example. Let's say maybe on LinkedIn, like I would follow their sales leaders because every year they go to President's Club, they're always bragging about it. They're like, oh, we're in Maui, or we went to Costa Rica, or wherever it might be. And then I'm gonna reach out to them right after President's Club, a lot of which is happening right now. And I would reach out and say like, hey, how was that trip to Maui? Insert a lot of what you do, like, you know, how are you treating your customer success teams? Or do you guys have other retreats? Or all of those, like those are ins I'm gonna look for because the trip just happened. They're really high on that. And then two, there's probably other areas of their org that maybe they're underserving and or they just want to use you for next year to see what you're about. So yeah, does that help? Okay, cool. I just kind of pulling this thread again. This would be different examples of like value that I provide and am bringing to the conversation. So feel free to take those in. Also, if you guys are like constructing messages as well for your different businesses or thoughts, I'm definitely open to those. And I've got more examples on more of like an outbound side. But again, it's like, I'm just using the example of my space of like technical employees that don't typically want to talk on the phone to people. If they're starting a trial, they actually want help to make sure that's successful. They probably had something in mind. So whatever it is, whether it's maybe they attended a webinar, I'm giving them the value I bring in this second one is like, I wanted to see what questions you had for our panel ahead of the webinar. Maybe if they ask a boring question, I can straight up answer it and tell them, oh, hey, you don't even need it for the webinar. But maybe it's the VP of Global Engineering at JP Morgan, and they're like, I want to find out this one thing. I'm going to immediately bring that to the attention of our CMO and the person running that webinar, and we're going to make sure that gets answered, and I'm going to make sure they're engaged. Different examples here. And then call to action. That red is kind of hard to read, so apologies there. But again, pending, like, as an example in your case, right? Like, let's say someone went to President's Club and they just posted about it this week. I'm not gonna ask them like, maybe, I could be wrong, but I'm probably not gonna ask them like, hey, could I hop on, could we hop on a call for 30 minutes to see like where you're going next or something? Maybe it's just a simple question of like, have you already planned for next year's President's Club? Or have you considered doing retreats to help other organizations within your company that aren't rewarded for a President's Club or something of that nature, right? Start a conversation. Maybe people haven't even thought about the fact that they could reward their engineering team or their customer success team with a retreat. So those are ways I might ask for a conversation versus straight for the meeting. So.
This might be my own internal like hesitation around
Sure.
sales, but like some of that I'm like, I still feel like they're just gonna smell it still feels like sales, right? So like,
Yeah.
Is there this middle ground of like, people don't want to get sold to kind of a situation? Like that's where I feel curious about the conversationality of it.
I totally agree. I think specifically for your business, that's why I'd love to talk about social media. I think if you posted footage of you hosting retreats at exotic places and posted it on LinkedIn, you would get inbound leads from that as well. And or you could, as an example, let's say, I literally saw a post today of someone bragging about going to Hawaii for President's Club, so this is why I keep using that example. But like, you could comment as an example and say, hey, Mr. and Mrs. CRO, like, that's an amazing trip. Like, we did a similar thing in Costa Rica, like, amazing, like, looks like an awesome time. And all of a sudden, they're like, who is this person? But then they go to your LinkedIn, and they see all of your posts are you hosting retreats, et cetera. but that's like a 4D chess, like long-term play. So I'm making it sound way simpler than it is. That's like months of work. But I think from what I've heard, like your business would be awesome from the retreat side, especially for social media. Because, like, are you going to beaches or mountains or?
So I don't host my own retreats right now. I get hired by companies to attend their retreat that's already happening and doing like a special session.
Oh, okay.
A couple hours long.
Okay.
I do have an objective to do retreats, but I haven't done it yet.
Gotcha. Okay. Even so, I think like, do you do when you show up? Is it conference room? You guys out on a beach? Like,
Outdoors,
nice. Okay.
when possible.
Yeah. So sorry if I'm getting out of abstract here, but if you have footage, like I think that would be killer, and that's a great way to your point of like, yes, they're going to know it's salesy, but also you might catch them. One, you might actually have someone interested because you're a founder, so they're like, okay, like it's not a salesperson. But two, if maybe they're like, like that's interesting, not right now, but they follow you or they look at your LinkedIn profile and they see you leading like a session on the beach or in the mountains or something, they're like, okay, like now I'll take a conversation because I see the evidence of what you're doing. So, cool. And sorry, I hope you don't mind me like grilling your example. I think it's awesome. So I appreciate it. Cool. Outbound, again, if you have the luxury of inbound leads, I always recommend starting there because once you do that, it's a little bit easier to kind of take that same structure and map it to outbound. I just want to give, this is kind of a bland example. I wouldn't even say that I like this one a ton, but I'll give you guys a second to read it, and then we can kind of break it down further. Again, this is just one example, not even saying I'm like super tied to it. We actually had someone in our community that actually started a lot of conversations with this type of messaging. I think it worked for them. It's not my style, but more power to them. Again, just kind of showing the overall structure here. It's not like it has to be 3 sentences, and the example I'm going to show you here in just a bit of that founder was more than 3, but it generally has that same structure, especially with outbound. Because I think to some of the points here earlier, the biggest objections when it comes to like outbound, when you're reaching out to someone outbound, is like, one, we all get those emails. We get that wall right away of just like, oh, here we go. But two, I'm like decently interested within the first sentence. I get the sense that like you at least understand me. Like if there's, whether it's like thumbnails or, in the example of the founder that we helped reach out to other founders, it was just like, hey, fellow marketplace CTO, right away, there's like so much credibility built up. So I just want to give some examples here of outbound. So again, this is a lead who has no idea who your business is. They're not familiar with your website. Some different ones that I have done and had success with is talking about a recent raise. That is more common now, I will say, and that's something like a tool like Clay can automatically detect. So it will see in the news that somebody raised 10 million and now they're going to get 100 emails. I actually I have a guy in my network that runs a company called Whippy, and he was talking about like the first month that they really started to grow and got in the news. He was like excited because he was getting like a lot of traction, a lot of emails, and then he realized that all of that was Clay. Like after 50 people say like, hey, I saw you're a UCLA Bruin or whatever, he's like, okay, wait a minute, this is like okay, this is automated. And then like I think Clay reached out to him and gave him a pitch, and he was like, okay, this is bullshit. Yeah, just a couple examples here. I know we've talked a lot about that with the businesses. So I think especially when we're talking about outbound value here in terms of like, again, what is the value you can bring like very specifically to them? I go back to the example here in your example. I'd be curious, like maybe at the end if you're willing to share messaging examples you have.
I actually just pulled it up.
Okay, sweet.
I'm trying to compare it. We're honestly pretty aligned in terms of the language. It's just, what was funny is I started hiring for a role myself this like past week,
Mm-hmm.
and like they're using the same structure.
Yeah.
There are other recruiting agencies who are now reaching out to me because they see I'm hiring
Mm-hmm.
through Clay or whatever, and they're using the same structure. So it might just be a more creative solution. I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm going to share it, yeah.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I'd love to see it because I think, again, hopefully I'm not too meta at this point, but going back to the earlier point of like really, really defining who you're reaching out to. It's not just software engineer 2s at big tech companies. It's like software engineer 2s. You can even now get as specific as going on LinkedIn and seeing like different skill sets. So maybe you're targeting software engineer 2s at Fortune 1000 companies that specifically work with Google Cloud BigQuery, and there's other like different tags and whatnot. But if you do that and get down that specific, These are generic messages that I don't feel today in 2025 are specific enough, but hopefully give you a sense for, again, in your example, if you're breaking down really specifically into industries, you can tweak a couple of different words and really have a huge impact on how the email is performing. So again, a couple simple examples of outbound calls to action, and then we're actually going to get into the founder message and show you what has worked well for them. But again, really, I think this all right sizes on who your customer is, what the ask is. If you're asking for like fundraising or meeting with investors, that's going to change my approach compared to meeting with like a low-level software engineer. If it's like a software engineer, I might just ask them for the meeting, see if they're willing to take it, because if not, probably not worth my time anyway, et cetera, et cetera. Cool. The one thing I'd say, and what you're going to see in the example coming up, is while there are soft ways to ask like we talked about, and to your point, like they can still, a prospect may be like, okay, like they want something, right? And I'm not going to say we can avoid that entirely, but the flip side is one thing I've had to work with a lot of founders in particular who are new to sales is like it's really comfortable to get a conversation. It's really fun to be like, hey, I'm technical, I'm not a salesperson, I'm going to have a conversation, we're just going to talk. But if it's too soft and it's not like under the premise that you're actually trying to sell them something, you're going to waste your time. So I know like coaching may be a little different with like a free consultation because of the nature of your business. But for instance, when I'm working with an early stage founder, I don't know how relevant this is to you, but like if you're saying, hey, I'm just starting this thing, I'm just looking for initial users, if that phrasing is too soft, they may come into the call thinking that they're just going to give you feedback for your product. And then when you try to sell them, they're like, yo, I'm out. Like that wasn't what I signed up for. So regardless of what your call to action is and how you structure your email, I think it just needs to be clear that like you are here to sell. That's fine. Like they're in business too. They work in a business that has to make money to pay their bills. So yeah, that's kind of the last one there.
Eric,
Yeah.
I have a sample that I'm dropping off with Four Seasons Hotel,
Mm-hmm.
but I want to actually do what you just asked. You just said that just to get their feedback, because I've never really worked with big, large volume like Four
Hotel.
Seasons.
Yeah.
So what would you suggest a call to action for this marketing manager? I'm emailing her tomorrow.
Okay. So it's a marketing manager, and then what exactly would you be trying to sell them on? Like.
I really want to get her feedback.
Okay.
On the products, because I think it's an opportunity for them to promote their sustainability initiatives.
Mm-hmm. Okay. What are their sustainability initiatives?
No single-use plastics.
Okay.
That's one of them.
Do you have they documented in their earnings reports or anything how they've done?
Yep.
Okay. Sorry, this is the specificity I'm talking about. I love this. What kind of outcomes have they already had, or what kind of changes have they already made?
So just to give you a little bit of an overview, the UN has 17 initiatives to reduce pollution, reduce waste and water pollution. It's like a bunch of initiatives, right? And Four Seasons, they waste food, they waste like a bunch of things. So they committed to at least to save water, to not waste food, and to completely 100% eliminate single-use plastics.
Okay. And you're selling specifically kind of biodegradable like waste bags, is that right?
To-go containers.
To-go containers. Okay, interesting. Okay. One, I would say if you haven't and can walk in there and like order a meal to go for lunch tomorrow, I might do that and see what they give you. That'd be interesting.
I was thinking.
And then two, from there, I think that's honestly the genesis of where my mind goes is between all of that data you have and also your in-person experience. I think it would be really compelling, and I'm just kind of shooting from the hip here, but if you went in, took a picture of your experience, talked about that, that's going to catch their attention of like, hey, I actually went into the Four Seasons today and got a burger in styrofoam. Like I saw your, like that would be a killer opener. And then like I saw your single-use plastic initiatives or all of these different things. Now, obviously, if it's not styrofoam, I would go with a different lens. But I would imagine, and this is where kind of your, as a founder, your knowledge of your space is going to come in handy. What is one thing you can like critique from that experience that really brings it to their attention? Because that's showing them, that you understand like their world. So that's one example of like where I might start is, can you actually go there because there's a Four Seasons right here and see what they do? Like that, I think, maybe I'm thinking of a different hotel, but I don't think it's the Four Seasons, but there's one I got a coffee from right next to it. I think that's like a plastic cup. So I would order a drink, I would order anything, and then anything that they have that's not single use, I would point that out as maybe a way to start a conversation.
What would be the CTA?
Call to action? Yeah, I think, well, and then I think even before jumping the gun there, let me ask you, let's say, hey, like, you know, subject line, I'm just kind of spitballing here, but like Austin location using styrofoam as like a subject line or something like that, right? You have the opener, which is like, hey, just wanted to reach out given your single-use initiatives. I actually got a burger in styrofoam or something of that nature. What would your, I know it's kind of hard on the fly here, so don't get me wrong, I'm not expecting like greatness, but what would you even offer them from a value perspective?
First of all, I think what I'm really trying to get at is this, I think it's an opportunity for them to advertise themselves using these, my products.
Okay.
So, because the product is actually really cool. You can actually freeze it in the freezer, you put it in the oven, and you put it on the microwave and the buffet table, all in one container. Because it's natural, so it can take all kind of temperature, wide range.
Okay.
So and also because it has no microplastics,
Okay.
which is huge for them. The chef would love those type of functionality, but I don't think that would sell for this marketing manager. The marketing manager would want to promote, okay, we are environmental compliant, whatever it is.
Interesting. I want to, and this is amazing, by the way. Thank you for contributing this, because I think this talks about, I don't even have the answer, but this highlights a lot of the specificity that I think is missing in a lot of emails that I'm talking about, because the things that you just said, one, are incredible. So tomorrow I'm ordering ice cream, I'm ordering the hottest item on their menu, I'm ordering an iced tea, and I'm ordering a hot coffee, and I'm seeing if those containers are different. And now the question becomes, so one of the things that you talked about is, sure, this is versatile, it's one package for everything. That in of itself could be a value proposition to more of a financial person. Can you replace the fact that they have, maybe you see on the bottom of the cup that it comes from some manufacturer in the US and then their burger holder container comes from China or something of that nature. If they could consolidate, there's potential value of using one provider for all their packages. I don't know if you're there, but I think it's also worth like getting really specific to your point on the value. Because if you're coming to the marketing manager and you're saying, chefs love this, this can store in the freezer and the oven, they're like, that's cool. I put our logo on stuff. You know what I mean? So it's like, so I would get really clear on what that value is. And I'm happy to like keep pulling the thread on this example. But what is that marketing manager really going to care about in terms of like their packaging?
Publicity.
Yeah. And so then again, I think the angle for this email specifically for the marketing manager is more about the presentation on the packaging itself. Because if you hit them with like, hey, it stores in, you know, minus 30 degrees and 150, they're going to be like, okay, here's our chef, or probably just ignore the email.
Right.
So yeah, I'm happy to keep pulling the thread, by the way, but that's one like thought, at least in terms of the approach, is like, I would understand it and then get really, really clear on that persona of like what they care about.
Okay, so not just the value, what the product can bring to them, but what they care about.
Yeah. And I think you have a unique opportunity, and again, who knows, we'll see. But if you go on site tomorrow and you buy 15 different menu items, and you know as a designer or what your packaging can bring, it's not actually necessarily even telling them about what you can do, so much as like, are you aware that your croissants come in like a dirty brown bag? Like, are you aware that your to-go package, once my burger sits in it for 5 minutes, is like moist and like the moisture started to get into my car seat? Like those are things they're going to respond to, I think, more than like what you can bring to the table first.
Okay, get it. Thanks.
So now we get to the call to action. Sorry, I'll be right there. Does this help illuminate? Okay. So now we get to the call to action, and now my question is that, let's take this hypothetical example. You go to the Four Seasons, their packaging and marketing sucks. Like, it's just, it's like this small on a package that's this huge. So you highlight that to the marketing manager. What would your call to action be? Is it a conversation like, your value could be a combo of like, hey, I've worked with large brands to overhaul their their sustainable packaging, of which they often neglect their marketing and how it looks on these new packages. Could we talk for 30 minutes about how your packaging would better represent the Four Seasons brand?
Yeah.
That could be a call to action.
That's probably that sounds better.
Yeah.
Well, you can ask them for a sample too, or if they want a sample. Because sometimes people are stingy with their time, I found. So if like you're gonna mail them something or deliver something to them, they can just look at whenever. That
Totally.
could be a value add too.
I'm actually sending her a picture with the Four Seasons logo on it.
Okay, nice. Okay.
Yeah. So, thoughts on that? Does that help?
Yeah, that helps.
Great example. Thank you for bringing that up. So, Ryan?
Yeah, my question, just hearing about all of this understanding of what they're going through, what they really care about. From like, I haven't sent really hardly any cold outreach. Like, most things have been through my network. So like, getting started with that at an early stage in sales, how much time should be spent like figuring this stuff out versus time just sending emails? Like an hour, like 5 minutes, like.
That's a great question, because that's a very large black hole of like I'll try and answer this the best way possible off the cuff. I think you have probably done enough business at this point to at least you don't give yourself enough credit for the sales savviness you have even with your network. I think you know your market better than you give yourself credit for. And I would say in your case, because you have this experience, I would spend maybe an hour trying to really, really, kind of that exercise we did was honestly a good example, like really distill down who that person is. But then at that point in your case, because you have customers, you have a business that's already going, I would focus on doing like decent test of, hey, I'm gonna send 25 to 50 messages minimum that are all by hand and custom, but generally using this framework. And if I'm starting to get positive responses, now I'm going to scale it up. If not, I'm going to review. Hopefully you get a response or two. Someone can tell you why they are or are not interested. But that's how I would think about it in your case.
And if they don't respond on the first email, what do we do?
Can definitely send them more, and that's actually a great segue to. So.
Maybe send to another person in the same company, but from what I hear, it requires sometimes 7 touches before someone replies to your email.
Totally. Yeah.
I don't say you have to send 7 emails, but do at least like 1 today. If you don't get a response in a week, maybe after 10 days, send again.
Yeah. And I think in your case too, it's like, that's really what I've come to find, and I'm jumping ahead a little bit, but he's absolutely right. Like sometimes it does take 7, 10 touches. Generally speaking, I find if someone doesn't respond within either the first 2 emails or first 2 cold calls, if that's something you're doing, probably not, but you can automate the rest. So I would put a lot of emphasis on customizing definitely the first email, maybe the second, of where the second's not every line is custom, but there's like something in there that's custom. I'll elaborate on that in a bit. But then after that, as an example, in like your founder, one thing we do, so I'm a one-on-one coach as well for students as well, and we send like my first email, actually you guys have gotten them probably, is like, hey, saw you join the free lesson, like here's a couple of videos that people watch on my YouTube and like all the time. What's got you looking at transitioning careers or breaking into tech sales? And I'm trying to start a conversation with you guys to see if you're serious or have questions I can help with. Then from there, like to your point, especially for the coaching business, it's just testimonial, 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 testimonial. Like we have 100+ of them at this point. So do you have any of those with founders or anything? Okay, yeah, yeah.
I'm having like a video shot this weekend, and I was on like an interview, so I think like that moving content is getting more available. I have a question about following up with warm leads, but I don't want to distract from the
No,
so I can
go
save it
ahead.
for the end. Or?
Feel free, yeah.
So one of my clients did one of these offsite like add-ons that was very like with their brand at their national summit. So it had all the marketing managers from the region. So now that I live in Austin, the marketing manager here loves me. She had me down for lunch, introduced me to the sales team, etc. Through that conversation, they were like, "Oh, you could be a great add-on to our corporate bookings. You know, you need to talk to the director of events." I got both of those people that had lunch with me sent me direct emails to this director of events and her assistant. She has not responded to any of them. Today I dropped by a gift and a card to see if that would work. Still no text.
Still
or
nothing.
Email.
Okay.
And I'm like,
Yep.
this is like, I've been paid by multiple properties in this hotel chain and I've had 2 internal recommendations. Like, why is this person not getting back to me?
Yeah, interesting.
It's very strange.
Yeah, that's a rough one where they obviously have a lot going on. Kudos to you for already doing some of the things I would have recommended, which is going in person and or an actual by hand or unique gift. I think honestly, if I don't know your comfortability with cold calling, but I might even try that and leave some voicemails. Another thing is I might reiterate in an email what you have done, and we can talk about how to make sure that doesn't come across as like desperate. But then also I think something to consider is like even going back to those 2 contacts you had and saying like, hey, I haven't heard from, I don't know, Debbie or whatever their name is, and like, could you hit them up again, or could you, and again, you would ask it better than that, but but those are some of the things I would think about doing. Yeah.
I get the vibe potentially that just the culture or the structure is overwhelmed, like too busy, because even like my very close contacts there will be kind of touch and go with how much they respond, and I'm working with like not making it like it's about me. But I don't know. Do you coach people through that? Because I'm like, I don't want to be annoying. But I'm like just confused because it's very like, hi, we're here. Like I'm sending you a personal text message. I'll have you over for lunch, and then it's like dead.
Nothing. Yeah.
And,
I know, so we've got plenty of time here, so let me come back to you at the end on ideas there. But as an example, I would ask you maybe as something to think about between now and then is what is in it for them, to your point. Like, you're absolutely right. You don't want to make it like, hey, like, I need clients. You told me you would introduce me. It's like, again, this is generic and we'll break it down more. I'll jump into this. But that's what I would say is like, how can you bring value to them? Is there anything you can either offer them directly for free that would benefit them from a coaching perspective, and or maybe you have someone in your network that you could introduce them to, or just some kind of olive branch of good faith to maybe get the conversation going or align to their incentives. So something to think about. But
To your question, coming back to 7 touches, it don't have to be like 7 emails. You can also use live posts on LinkedIn, DM on LinkedIn, use other social media, send text message. So it don't have to be just emails.
Yep.
And coming back to value proposition, once I was listening to audiobook, and it was saying instead of value proposition, do success proposition. So think how using your product, that person will be more successful in eyes of his boss, and explain it, make it better.
yeah.
So that person will be happy to have you in
Yeah.
the team.
No, agreed. And was this, you were saying something about becoming in their partner network? This would be for your one-on-one coaching or for?
No, it's for the offsites.
Okay.
It's kind of an interesting opportunity. I could go on and on.
Sure. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, it would basically be like being an add-on when like any corporation books like their whole banquet floor. It's like, oh, we have a person who can offer this specific
Thing. Yeah.
midday break.
Okay.
That offers XYZ thing. And I already know internally they're actually trying to develop this programming. They've had like little competitions within the sales teams to like ideate these things. And so I think that was helpful, what you said.
Yeah. Because one thing I was going to say is,
Spelling it out more clearly, maybe. Because
Yeah.
they had just had a renovation. I think they're really super busy.
Swamped,
but,
yeah. No, I think that's fair. And I was going to say on all of these points that maybe even think of like the structure of the email being like, hey, I wanted to reach out, like the reason Lauren or whatever introduced me to you is because I do X, Y, and Z specifically. They told me that, why is it valuable to that director? And then there's that call to action. Like, I'm sure you're swamped right now with the renovations. or something, that even shows that like you get their world. Like you're not an average coach trying to break into this ecosystem. So those are definitely great thoughts as well. I know we're coming up on your time, so I want to.
I'm good.
You're good? Okay, cool. Because we are actually at the example I promised, I swear. We're getting there. So this is just, again, kind of reiterating, like, I think this is very obviously a bad email. I don't need to show you guys that, whether you have sales experience or not. I wake up to these every day. But again, you as someone who is trying to sell something and stand out needs to understand that someone like me is waking up to literally 5 to 10 of these every night because thumbnail and video editors primarily live overseas, and all of these emails hit my inbox at 4 a.m. So I wake up and I see 10 of these, and if you may send me an amazing email, and I'm just like, God, another one, you know, and done. And I don't even read it. And this happens every day. So I say that because, again, I want to show you now, this was the email that the founder came up with. No experience, very good, good start. They sent this over 1,000 times with Clay, and they used these brackets here, by the way, as you may be familiar, but like tools like Clay and whatnot, they can research stuff and scrape information on the internet and then just like throw it in here. So they sent this to 1,000 people, and I'll let you guys kind of read this real quick. In context, they had an old business, they're starting a new company. So this is referring to their company. It's like, hey, before I started this company, I ran this company, a marketplace doing X, Y, and Z. Blah, blah. So it's like, I'm building a new company specifically for marketplace founders to provide AI agents that tackle these exact issues. I'd love to see if there's any potential overlap in the challenges you're facing at company. Is there anything that jumps out at you that you would like AI to do for you? I would love to pause here and get your guys, I know I told you this is like the okay email, I told you the result. Maybe that's a future note for me. Maybe I'll be like, which one do you think was the best? I would love to get your feedback as to why you guys think this didn't work. And I genuinely haven't even analyzed it myself, but based on all the information I've provided, like, how does this hit you? Does this make you see it maybe differently than you would have prior to this session? Or let me ask another way. Where do you think, if I'm the CEO of a marketplace company or high up in a marketplace company, where do you lose me? Where do you lose me in this email?
That first paragraph just seems very salesy, and like, I'm like, what am I reading? And I'd probably stop and just delete it at that point.
Okay.
All those numbers, I'd be like, why does this pertain to
Yeah.
me?
Well, it's just like bragging about his
Bragging,
past
yeah.
accomplishments. And
Okay.
I'm just like, I don't care,
Yeah,
honestly.
nice.
And, why am I reading this?
I hope he hears this. He watches the channel, so he's gonna be yeah. This is
So
it.
this email talks about a sender,
Mhm.
but it clearly shows that like, the sender haven't done research about receiver, and yeah, so it's just like saying, here I am, now think how you can pay me money.
I agree 100%. What I would add, though, is this is kind of getting into some of the minutia that I feel like your LinkedIn influencers and YouTubers like myself can't express in just a cookie-cutter video, is the intention behind this was good, which is I am a CTO. I am an accomplished CTO, and I'm not here to waste your time. But again, the way it comes off to all of your points, absolutely, is like either look at me or like there's two companies, like you're a two-time founder, like, yo, what are you talking about? You know, like, any other thoughts too? I don't want to, but I totally agree, but I want to add that nuance again because you as people who think, oh yeah, that's bad, I would never do that, that again was coming from a good place of like trying to be not a salesperson.
Seems like he's trying to provide value before he understands like what they need or understands their world.
Really good point.
If you're going through the, understand what they're going for, provide value, call to action, that's like your framework. You just went to, here's my value.
Totally. I agree.
I would also say that the CTAs are like, it's vague and it's not really asking, like, are you asking, for, like, when I ask for something, it's like, it should be like a short answer, I feel like I'm asking from them, instead of like, is there anything that jumps out to you that AI could do for you? Like, do you want me to like respond and write like 4 paragraphs about what AI should do for me, or like, what is the ask, right? So
Totally.
I feel like that's vague here.
Totally. And again, just stating that behind this, we are targeting generically people that work at marketplaces. That's about the depth of thought that went into this. So again, we sit down, we work with them, and I realize, again, like, you're a founder, you're not a salesperson, but also one thing they started to do was go, like, they restructured this, there's other emails, I don't want to put them on blast, but then it was like, let me go like super soft of like, hey, I'm building this, I'm looking for early user feedback. And I was like, well, are you gonna try and sell them? And he's like, yeah. And I'm like, absolutely not. That will never work. But now, yeah. So last thing is, so I came to him, I'm like, listen, you're an accomplished CTO, you've raised money, you've done all these different things, like you have the credibility, and I think it is worth stating early that you are a CTO. But from here, we are going to ask them to be like, again, this is a conversation I'm simulating, but it's like, what is your goal? Your goal is to get free users, to get real feedback, and get real results for real companies, so you have testimonials to then go broader. But they need to understand that it's not going to be free forever. So the goal is basically to get them to agree to potentially be a free customer for a while, but set expectations once we're on the call that like, yes, it's free for now. If I provide value within 3 to 6 months, we're going to go switch over to paid. And their website already had pricing on it. So now we're going to look at this, and I'll let you guys read it real quick. And I'm not here to say that this is the most amazing message ever. I would love to get your feedback. I think even now there's things I would A/B test in this and still see if I could further optimize. But initial thoughts on this one.
So to me, this one is like have done more research on prospect business, and but I would add a more successful position to more details, because here it says marketplace, which is like very broad term. To add more to be more specific, how it can help a person who receives that message and read it, and how much money he can make with this product, how much time he can save with the product, what other benefits he will get.
Mm-hmm.
Because right now, everyone knows AI, everyone uses it, but how exactly it helps me be successful.
Yeah, exactly. Other thoughts?
The ask is everyone fair.
Yeah.
Connect. I'd say it's a little too long. It's not super long, but like it's still like 2 sort of big paragraphs, and I just sort of skim over it if I was busy and not really
Totally.
paying attention. But it does, establish fellow CTO at the beginning, so that might catch my attention to read it.
Yeah, enough to give it a little bit more of a thought.
More thought,
Yeah, I'm with you 100%.
I was like AI agents for a second. It's like,
Yeah.
I built AI agents. Okay, that's interesting.
Yeah.
So it's good.
I also pay $20 a month to ChatGPT. Like, yeah. So, nice. Yeah, I agree. I think, again, it's always easier to make this sound like after the fact that we knew what we were doing all along. The reality is we tested. So I don't want to sit here and act like I'm some like guru who had the answer all along. I think just reiterating and things to think about in your own business, the reason we decided to lead with them building them specifically, so we've established credibility up here, CTO founder level. Now, because AI is like, you guys know, it's like you see AI, you're like, I'm sure, AI for slides, AI for all these different things. Like you've seen a million apps. I wanted to show sweat equity from this founder that is like, I specifically have built AI agents for my business, which they've already said, I'm a fellow CTO in the marketplace space, that handle 7,000 messages a day and automatically detect fraud. Making a long story short, as we sat down with the founder, marketplaces are very dependent on high transaction volume. So like, again, marketplace being like you enable someone to sell shoes and you have to have buyers as well. You make money, you don't make a lot of money on each shoe transaction. You make a lot of money by having millions of people list their shoes and millions of people buy those shoes. So just restating, we're showing some of the value here being like we have handled high volumes of messages. And then fraud is also a big one for a lot of different reasons I won't necessarily go into. Lastly, again, we're reiterating, it's like, not that I saw this right away, but it's like you find some milestone. So in the case of the company I'm referring to earlier, they raised $7 million. Surely the CEO with that money is trying to use that efficiently. Marketplaces as well, they are always squeezed. You'd be amazed. The reason we used operating margins specifically is a lot of them are not profitable. So I'm forgetting the name. He's got a friend who runs like one of the bigger marketplaces. I'm not much of a marketplace guy in terms of like thrift buying or flipping or stuff like that. but one of the biggest ones in the world that is valued at close to $1 billion is still not profitable. So like operating margin is everything here. So we're showing we've handled like actual meaningful high volume use cases. We're showing we've detected or used them to detect fraud, which is a big problem that a CTO that runs their own marketplace would know. But also we're hitting on the key value that CEOs are going to be measured by, which is their operating margin, which is a real thing. Like sure, every business is operating margin, but that is very, very specific because we've established the credibility as a CTO. So again, I make this sound like I make it sound way easier than it is. It's always easier to say like looking back. But lastly, again, it's like every CEO right now is thinking about AI, but we've already shown that we've solved 2 major problems. And now, even though the ask is still kind of generic, which this one was as well, and I totally agree it was not great, we've said like, hey, we've got 2 use cases and we're thinking about more specifically for marketplaces. So it's honestly like we're going to be that CEO's therapist. To your point of like sometimes you're like a business therapist, like we're almost setting him up to like let the CEO just dump for 30 to 60 minutes all the things they wish they could do or don't even know about with AI in their business. So again, like I said, like it's always easier to connect the dots looking backwards. I don't want to make it sound like we knew this all the way. This took a lot of conversation with the founder. This took a lot of trial and error and experimentation. But I think again, it goes back to the value of my original thesis, like starting this out, which is this is a 1%, top 1% email. And it takes a little bit to get there. The exercise we went through with 4 Seasons was a great one. I think that's a great starting point. And I would encourage you to test that with different personas in the business. Same with you as well. It's like, yeah, we can talk through like how much time you should spend crafting it versus testing. But I think you've got to find that sweet spot between, like if you've never sent a sales email, you're not going to get this on the first go. You're going to get it by sending several different emails, really trying to define your persona, and then really trying to come up with different examples and keep iterating. So, oh yeah, just breaking it down there with the colors.
One thing to add, for me as a software engineer and like person who like his own product, users they don't care how many messages you process per day. They more care about how much you reduce fraud for the marketplace. So in this case, I would remove part is how many messages you process and say that for company X, they reduce profit by 7%, and here's testimonial, a link to your video.
So that would be what I would say is like an email 2 or 3. Because I think right here, at least, and again, this is something you can test. I encourage you to test. Because yeah, maybe the case study does ultimately perform well. I think right now, though our approach was, let's make it very clear that we've solved 2 cases for marketplaces specifically, not just tech companies, not just e-commerce businesses, but marketplace businesses specifically. And now it's more really trying to extend the olive branch of like starting that conversation. So maybe that is a case study, but what I would say is leading with something like this, if you have the credibility, especially as a founder, or maybe you're a sales rep at like a top organization, you're going to have a lot of weight, especially with a well-crafted email because you're a globally recognized brand and or you're a founder. So then maybe email 2, like I would still, generally speaking, the data that I have would encourage you to do something custom like this on the first email. But to your point then, the second email, if they don't respond, is like, hey, here's this customer, we detected fraud, and whatever that outcome is that's relevant to them. And maybe again, that third email is another case study. And maybe the second email is like another ask of like, hey, here's a case study of how we worked with this marketplace. Am I off base here, or would this be relevant to you? But then the third one is like same thing. It's like, am I wasting your time here, or do you want to meet for 30 minutes and talk about it? Yeah.
So question, there is a term like A/B testing. Do you think it's a good idea to craft maybe 3 emails and send them like evenly to prospects?
So yes and no. So I think A/B is a good start. The challenge is, or let me put it this way. If you're going to do something like 3 emails that are totally different, that's fine. I would start there. But I would encourage you, if you find one, so like for instance, I do thumbnail testing on YouTube. We get 3 thumbnails per video. If I have one that gets like 40% click-through rate and the other 2 have 25%, I'm obviously taking the 40%, but I'm not creating 2 brand new ones. I'm taking the one that's getting 40% and I'm changing the text color, or I'm changing one element from that. So I would start with, as an example, 3 emails that are totally different from each other. But then once you have one that is a clear winner, I'm only A/B testing one variant of that email going forward. So maybe it's the subject line. Now I have the winning email body. Now I want to test the subject line. So I'm going to send the same exact email with a different subject line. That's the only way we're going to get meaningful data and differences between the two. Now maybe we find that the original subject line is crushing. Now I'm going to change this middle statement of the second one, maybe to your point, to have a more fraud-specific one that's focused on fraud. And then I'm going to see if I notice any difference in performance. So I think, generically speaking, A/B testing is good, but you have to continue to refine and define exactly what it is you're testing. Otherwise, if you're just testing another email, another email, another email, it's like, what's the point? Like completely different email, you know what I mean? Versus like very clear iterations.
So this is for emails. Would you experience or have any success by contacting this executive suite on LinkedIn?
Totally, yeah.
Yeah? Would emails be more or less versus LinkedIn?
It really depends. I think it's not an either or per se. You can definitely do both. The way that I think about, in your case specifically, something like LinkedIn, I mean, I could be wrong. I've always had, generally speaking, better success with email. That's just me. There's some people who crush LinkedIn. Everybody's going to find their strength. Something like LinkedIn in the example that we talked about, I think would be killer to send a picture right away. Because especially, like if I get a picture in an email, I'm like, okay, this is a scammer or something. Like they want me to click on it and like steal my identity. But no one sends pictures and or video. Very few people send pictures or videos on LinkedIn. So if you're going to that marketing manager or an executive at the Four Seasons and you send like a horrible looking picture of their packaging that has their logo like crumpled or something, that stands out right away. That's something that I would consider. I'm not saying, I always make it sound easier than it actually is. But the short answer is it's not either or. Maybe send them that picture on LinkedIn to try and get their attention with a really short note of like, are you aware this is your packaging in Austin, Texas, Four Seasons location? And then I'm going to send them the more comprehensive, composed email like I talked about directly to their email inbox. And I'm going to do both at the same time.
You can send them direct message or post like on their page on LinkedIn.
LinkedIn,
Like private or public message?
private for sure. If you're doing what I'm talking about, which is like embarrassing them because their logo's bad, I would not do that publicly. Yeah. 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 Yeah, 2 approaches. You can send a connection request, wait for them to accept that, and then send the message, or you can pay for the in-mails. Yeah.
So thus far in my business, it's basically been like organic growth, and I'm just starting to do these more like internet outreach stuff.
Yeah.
My LinkedIn is not completely inactive, but I wouldn't say it's like flashy and awesome, and it's just me, like I don't have a team doing that right now. So part of me is like, okay, I have like a list of people I could send these in-mails to. But if they look at my page, I don't feel like it's that impressive. So do I stop and like feed my LinkedIn for like a month and then do these things? Or, as far as like really priorities wise, like how do I get it all done? How do I prioritize this sort of?
So no one wants to see dead profiles. When you DM someone, they check your profile and see its last message a year ago. It will seem like a dead,
It's not dead, I just don't think it's like super impressive. Like mine looks like I run my business myself, which is true, but I'm like talking to these like huge companies. So I'm like, what do I need to do to look like, oh, she's worth talking to?
Yeah.
While at the same time not really having a whole lot of my time to devote it to like social.
Yeah.
What visual content you already have videos, cut them, pieces, upload them.
Yeah, but I think the question is more around like time management, right? Because in theory, we would all make TikToks and dance and do all that stuff on every platform, which that's all of our final state, that's where we all will end up. But in terms of like where to prioritize our time, short answer is, honestly, I think with the connections you have, I would probably start with like emails and or in person because you're already doing that. So I would start there, not even because it's going to be the answer, but you're going to have a better sense for if your emails are not working, you're going to have a better chance at understanding why. Versus if you haven't done LinkedIn at all and you're starting fresh, like I'm not saying do one or the other, you could do both. But I would say maybe 80% of the time, emails, in person, working your network because you've already done that successfully. 20% of this, and as you get signals, you can. I don't really play the LinkedIn game. I'm just starting to post. But what I would say is like, even if it's a simple, like we have a call to action to our website right here. A lot of people find me on YouTube and add me on LinkedIn. I'm not even posting on LinkedIn or getting followers there. But if they hit my page, they hit this and it goes back to our website. And then there's other things you can do. Like you could do featured, like if you have, I think to your point as well, if you have videos or LinkedIn, like let's say Johnson & Johnson, you did a session there and they posted about it on LinkedIn, I would repost that on your page and I would make that a featured post here. So at least when people hit your page, they're like, okay, like you're working with Johnson & Johnson, like it just helps a little bit. But LinkedIn, I will say like LinkedIn from a personal brand is not like my forte. So I don't know, hopefully that helped. Yeah, so you guys are welcome to add me too. And then I promise I don't post. I'm not a LinkedIn sales influencer. But last couple things. Yeah, we've talked about the sequence, and I will say we got about 7 minutes, just an FYI, and then I can hang out after outside, but they're like super particular. Email sequence, kind of like we talked about, to your points as well. I think case studies are great, but also generally speaking, if you're leading with that from I am reaching out to you as an individual, not like a newsletter follow-up or something of that nature, it's not going to hit as well. It's not going to build that like personal brand. It's like, hey, I'm a founder. Here's like 7 people we worked with, and they're like, that's cool. Do you know anything about what we do? But if you send a really custom email, or you got that introduction, and they know who you are and you're on their radar, maybe email 2 or 3 is case studies to reiterate, and they're like, oh, I totally meant to respond to that person. Let me do it now. Just for the sake of time, I'm going to zoom through this a little bit, but yeah, example sequence here. This is like, I would say the key takeaway. No exact science, A/B test like we talked about, but I think the first one should always be 100% custom. And again, when you narrow down by your ICP and you're reaching out to people who exclusively manufacture parts for auto companies in Detroit, it is 100% custom, but you've got a very narrow range of customization because you're really dialed in on that, right? And so yes, it's a lot of work up front, but once you do that, now maybe we can look to a Clay and we can go to maritime, people who make components for maritime vessels or Department of Defense companies or something of that nature. And again, these are just recommendations. Don't take this as like the gospel. But yeah, to your point, maybe email 2 is like, hey, I mentioned fraud. Here's someone we worked with. Is this even relevant to you? Do you have your fraud handled? Something of that nature. Email 3, another case study or another just bubbling up. Do you want to meet? And then there's different theories on like breakup email, but like, hey, don't want to waste your time. Am I completely off base here? Sometimes that gets a conversation going, but like I've said in my own experience, if they don't respond after the first 2, never say never, but it's pretty much a wash. Just examples with calls sprinkled in. If you wanted to, that's more for like reps. And then lastly, just talking about AI, like again, there's a sweet spot. Don't sit here and all this week plan how you're going to make the perfect email and send 1 email by Friday, or I guess tomorrow's Friday, but by Monday. I think there is something to be said about take your best guess, send it to 30 to 50 people, and now we're actually going to have feedback. If no one responded, okay, now maybe it's the email kind of sucks, and we got to have a real talk with ourselves. But now if we get 3 responses but nobody's meeting, why is that? Can we get them to follow up in the email thread? Can we send them, like, maybe they're like, hey, I'm interested, send me more information, and nobody's responding after that. Do we need to change our call to action, which is let's just go straight into a meeting? Or do we need to provide better information? Where did you miss the mark? Those are things, even if you can tell that a prospect is not going to go where you want, it's worth a Hail Mary to ask on the email thread as well. Then again, like once you find that, then scaling is something from there. I think scale in chunks. So it's like that message that we found that did really well. Obviously, there's a limited number of like C-suite executives at marketplaces in theory in the world. So I'm not going to, just because we found it worked for 1 person, I'm not going to say, okay, I'm going to hit every single person in the world. I'm going to try and use Clay and AI automation maybe for 200 of those personas. And now if the automation is getting 80 to 90% of what I got by manually doing it, now I'm going to take that up and do maybe 1,000. So just that distinction of like, just because it worked for 20 people doesn't mean I'm going to automate it for 10,000.
Sorry, can you go back to the last slide?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, simple sequence. I know you mentioned, like, I totally agree. You know, now there's people running cadences with like 10, 15, 20 steps, and I don't know the exact science, but just because, you know, if this is like a 1 week example, you can definitely go longer if you want to. And that's pretty much it. Yeah, these are the programs that we have that we work with people. And then, like I said, if you guys are interested, I do these in person in Austin because I very much enjoy it. And if you are interested in the lecture in the future, so this is the last session we had for Capital Factory on 16. And within a week or two, I'll have this up on the channel as well. So, yeah.
For emails, what do you use? Mails to see if they open the emails, they read the email? What do you use?
Yeah, there's different tools. If you're working for a company, they've got different tools. But if you're solo, I find a decent one is Apollo.io is a pretty good one. They have like sequencing tools you can use. You can also find leads there. Because some of the ones I used when I worked for different companies are like enterprise only. So they're only going to sell it to you if you're like a rep on their team or something. So.